Hi, everybody. So today we're going to be talking about grime. And we start this off by usually having a sweets kind of introduction. Usually I'll give you guys like donuts or something like that. But if you missed today, just know that there were sweets handed out and it is an integral part of this experience. So, donuts. Keep that in the back of your mind. Donuts are directly related to grime art in a very specific way. And it all starts off with thinking about this right here. So, this is usually in the presentation where I would start asking questions. So, most people can recognize at least one or two of the people in this image. This is actually the selfie that broke the internet. It broke Twitter, to be more specific. Twitter shut down when this was posted because so many people were liking it and retweeting it, and the infrastructure for Twitter literally just couldn't handle it. And all of those people in there were also a specific kind of people. They were famous people, which is what contributed to the mass amount of likes and retweets and stuff like that. So, famous people also tend to make up the most of the most popular people on these platforms. These platforms are usually called social media. Social media, by definition, is websites or are websites and applications that enable users to create and share content or participate in social networking. So it's really important there to create and share content. And the most common content that users have shared is, of course, the selfie. The selfie was added into the dictionary in 2013. So some of you guys might be a little bit too young to remember that, but it wasn't always a thing. But the fact of the matter is true that selfies are definitely the most common content on social media. So much so that people have even gone to start making digital art that are pictures like selfies, but they're actually digitally recreated. So, like, this girl isn't real, but like her whole Instagram page is like selfies of this girl who isn't actually real. And another thing has started to happen with selfies too. So, like with people taking more selfies and wanting to feel better about themselves, people have started to use more of these filters. And this is where the comparison to donuts and sweets come in. Filters are this thing that you put over your face, and it quite literally makes you look like all like sugary. It like clears up your skin. It's it like brightens up your darks and pushes your shadows. Filters are not real though. Like, that's not what real life is. And obviously, if all you did was post pictures of yourself filtered, that isn't a real representation of who you are or of what you look like. Donuts are kind of similar to that. You can't sustain a whole entire life on donuts. They're not like real food in a way. They're just kind of this like sugary thing that looks nice. And that's where people have started to run with this comparison. So donuts are actually used quite frequently as this idea of like this thing that looks nice, it's sweet, but it's not necessarily real or good for you. So Odd Future is a band, or not a band, it's like a group of music artists. And then we've of course got Rick and Morty and the famous Homer Simpson that all use donuts as like these dripping, gross donuts as a clear symbol of this kind of post-apocalyptic, different kind of future, altered realities, really. And in these altered realities, they show all sorts of things. And that is where grime comes in. Grime is an example of a different version of your own reality. So this is what grime looks like, and you can see it's got those same classic drips that you would see on donuts or anything kind of like gross and grimy. Typically, it was done to more famous people, but you can there is no one person who is the creator of grime. Grime is created by everybody, so you don't have to do famous people if you don't want to. And there's lots of different qualities that go into creating grime. Some are more common than others. The main ones that I want you to notice when you're looking are going to be complete skin coverage. So that is an important thing. Similar to the filter, you're going to completely cover the skin. It's also usually really multicolored. So some people go with like more bright, other people more muted, but either way, it's not supposed to be close to a skin color. So like that Justin Bieber one is kind of close to his skin color, so it's a little bit too close. It's also usually kind of a flat shading effect. What that means is the shadows and highlights are not blended. So when the shadows and highlights start blending, it kind of does this weird thing and it doesn't feel as graphic as it could have. And then there's also all these drips and dots and shadows and tattoos and like, you in some of the things you'll see like scars or like pock marks. And that's just to add to kind of like this gross feel that it comes from the grime. Another thing that you might see is some people do backgrounds. So for your project, we are going to request that you do backgrounds because I think it's a good exercise of pairing different kinds of textures along with patterns. And then you also sometimes will see that people have done their clothes. Again, just for continuity, we're going to do clothes and then also the hair. Hair can be kind of tricky to get that right, but it usually pays off in terms of the unity of the piece. Historically, this isn't the first of its kind that does something kind of gross in a rejection of society. The grotesque art form is a like category of art that has existed for as long as art has, and it is all about kind of like pushing away from like what is classically beautiful and acknowledging that there are other things in life that aren't. So it's supposed to be kind of gross. It's the real and kind of like fantastical though. So like there's always elements that kind of look realistic, but it's just supposed to be kind of gross. Now, grime started with this specific artist, and his name is Getter by Headsplitter. And so, like, that's the name of the song. And you can see elements of grime in it, and just in terms of like the message of grime overall as this like kind of altered reality version of yourself. So, we're going to play a little bit of this so you can see what that looks like. Let the record play and get your head knocking. Yeah, okay, so you get the idea. It's definitely kind of weird. And it's definitely an older kind of song, but it's this rejection of society for sure. Now, when thinking about doing grime for this project, we are going to ask you to actually grime yourself. Now, why would somebody want to show themselves in grime? That's kind of a big question. So, grime is a rejection of society. That's what I keep saying, a rejection of this idea that everybody is perfect and like has no flaws and life is filtered. So, grime is kind of like accentuating the fact that like yeah, we've got flaws and yeah, I have things that aren't perfect about myself and I am not going to be ashamed of that anymore. So that is why someone might show themselves in grime. And this is kind of an appealing thing too, because like the graphic style of grime makes it a very like attractive looking thing. Some people like when they see it, they're like, no, it's gross, I don't like it. But that is kind of the reason why other people do, because it is gross, because it is something different than the perfect pretty selfie that you might be used to. So Here's some student works. We have done this for a couple of years, and I really like the way that they turn out. So we're going to go through a couple of them and talk about some of the things that are the best parts about them and some things that I wish that were changed. So for the one that is this person right here, definitely really cool. The one thing that I want to stay away from is we can see that there's kind of a gash. Now, obviously, it's not a very detailed gash or anything like that. I'd prefer if we stayed away from like gore and stuck with more just gross. So, for example, like when you are looking at a movie to see if it is rated R or rated PG, if it's gory, it's going to be rated R. If it is PG-13 or even PG, it's just kind of gross. So, we're going to stick with just gross things. But otherwise, I think the pattern in the background is definitely very cool. I love the attention to the detail in the shirt, and the way that they did their grime actually flows really nicely in terms of the direction of their head. Now, this dude over here, you can see that this dude has some like drips on their clothing. I think that's really cool because, like, obviously, if you were going to have like this gross kind of like drippy skin, that would happen. One thing that I feel like is a little bit strange is there's some shakiness to some of these markings that I think could have been improved with just turning up the smoothing tool and just slowing it down a little bit. This one here is really neat. I love the choice of leaving the hair kind of soft and the shadowing in. The reason that that is okay is because they put so much detail and attention everywhere else. You can't get away with doing that every time, especially if you're not going to make things as very detailed. This was also one of, I think, 4 that this student did for this project. So I think that that's definitely kind of a cool thing that came in from that. Here's some other neat ones. So definitely this one is on of the girl with the sunglasses. Though that's definitely a more stylized version. You can see like the really kind of stylized approach to the shading in the hair and the shading everywhere else as well. There's a lot more soft shading than that dramatic shading that I talked about earlier. I really like the way that they decided to make a UFO in the background for this guy over here. You can see all of the drips are going a different direction. Definitely a cool approach to think about how your background could affect the way that your drips are actually flowing or like the tilt of your head and things like that. I love, love, love the color scheme in this one. So you guys, I think that when it comes to figuring out how you're going to handle this, color scheme is of the utmost importance because it's really what is going to make or break your piece. If you choose a color scheme that's kind of weaker or not necessarily like your favorite and you kind of keep trying to get away from it, it's probably not going to be as successful as if you found something that you're really content with. Here's another 2 great examples of color schemes. They chose the same color scheme, slightly different here and there. And this is also, these both have an incredible execution of the pattern in the background, which is really cool. Both of them made their own patterns, which is a requirement for this project as well. You can also see in terms of the drips here that the drips have a really nice kind of like teardrop at the bottom. They're not just like a tube that kind of flows and then comes back up. That tends to look more like snot. Both of these do a really great job with that teardrop effect. Okay, and that is the end of this presentation. Hope you enjoyed it.